Snow was falling heavily on the broken walls of Winterfell. The long night had begun. But this time, the plan had changed. Bran still sat near the Godswood, bait for the Night King, but something else was happening behind the shadows. Arya Stark, Jaime Lannister, and Brienne of Tarth had disappeared into the darkness just before the battle began. No one knew where they went, except a few trusted men. They were hunting the Night King. Arya moved like a ghost through the snow, her face pale but focused. She had killed before many times, but this was different. This was death itself. She had seen him during the last battle, his dead blue eyes, his quiet confidence. He was stronger, faster, and colder than anything she had faced. But she wasn't alone this time. Behind her walked Brienne, tall and strong, her sword strapped tight. She had fought many battles, but this was the one that would test her honor the most. And Jaime the Kingslayer walked beside her, his golden hand hidden beneath a black glove. He had changed, not just in body, but in heart. He wasn't fighting for Lannister pride anymore. He was fighting for the living. They moved silently beyond the battlefield, guided by Arya's knowledge of secret paths and tunnels around Winterfell. Arya believed the Night King wouldn't walk into the center of the fight. No, he would circle around, smart and quiet, just like her. He wanted Bran, but he wouldn't risk himself unless he knew he could win. That's where they'd wait. Jaime's breath came out in clouds as they reached an old broken tower. "You really think he'll come this way?" he asked quietly. His sword was already in hand, eyes scanning the cold woods. "He's not stupid," Arya replied. "He's hunting too. We just have to be better hunters." Brienne checked the area, placing her sword on the snowy ground for a moment. "I'll guard the south side. Arya, you take the north. Jaime, you stay with Arya. You're better together." The old Jaime might have argued. He might have said something clever or prideful. But this Jaime simply nodded. War had changed him. He had seen too much. He had loved and lost, and now all he wanted was to protect what little hope remained. They waited in silence as the wind howled. From time to time, they saw flashes of blue fire in the sky from dragon fights. The world was ending above them, but they waited, still and alert. And then it happened. The air grew colder. Not just winter cold, but the kind of cold that made your bones scream. The trees nearby froze, their branches turning white. Jaime stood up slowly, his breath caught in his throat. Brienne's hand closed around her sword. Arya's eyes narrowed. "He's here," Arya whispered. A shape moved in the shadows, tall, sharp, and silent. The Night King. His armor didn't make a sound. His eyes glowed like the moon, and behind him came a few White Walkers, their weapons made of ice, their steps shaking the ground. Jaime's hand trembled slightly, but he raised his sword. Brienne stood at his side without fear. Arya pulled out her Valyrian steel dagger, the same one that nearly killed Bran so many years ago. The Night King didn't speak. He only looked at them, his gaze cold and empty. He didn't care who they were. He had killed thousands. What were 3 more? But Arya moved before he could. She dashed to the side, distracting the White Walkers. Jaime charged forward, sword meeting ice. Brienne followed with a scream, her blade crashing into the first White Walker with fire in her heart. Steel clashed against frozen weapons. Sparks flew. The snow turned red in places. But none of them reached the Night King. He stood back, watching, waiting. He wanted them tired. He wanted them broken. But Arya was faster than he thought. She disappeared into the trees. And then, just as a White Walker knocked Brienne to the ground, Arya appeared behind the Night King. He turned slowly, just as her blade flashed, but he caught her hand. His grip was death. She screamed. And then Jaime shouted, running with everything he had. Jaime slammed into the Night King with all the strength he had, his golden hand crashing into the icy armor like a hammer. The force broke their contact, and Arya fell backward, gasping for air, her hand turning blue from the cold. The Night King didn't even flinch. He simply turned his head toward Jaime, his expression as lifeless as ever. Jaime swung his sword, but the Night King moved with inhuman speed, catching the blade mid-air. Ice spread from his fingers onto the steel, and with a slight twist, he shattered the sword into pieces. Jaime stumbled back, shocked, holding only the hilt. Brienne, blood on her face, charged again. Her sword connected with one of the White Walkers, slicing through its neck. The creature exploded into shards of ice. She didn't stop. She swung again, this time going for the Night King, but another walker blocked her path. Two more stepped from the mist behind him. "We can't fight all of them," Jaime shouted, breathless, pulling Arya to her feet. Arya's teeth were chattering. "I had him. I swear I had him." Her fingers burned with cold, but she gripped her dagger tighter. "We need to separate him from the others." Brienne cut down another walker, yelling, "Then we make him follow us." Without waiting for an answer, she struck the ground with her sword, sending snow flying, and charged straight at the Night King. Her swing was wild, desperate, but it caught him off guard. For a moment, he stepped back. "Run!" she yelled. Jaime grabbed Arya's hand, and they bolted through the trees. The Night King watched for a second, and then followed. Brienne gave them a few precious seconds before she was overwhelmed. They didn't see what happened to her. They only heard her scream echo through the trees before it was cut short. Jaime didn't stop. Neither did Arya. "He's following us," Arya whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Good," Jaime said, face pale. "Then we end this." They reached the ruins of an old Stark crypt, half buried in snow and shadows. Arya had chosen this place earlier, just in case. It was tight, dark, and filled with narrow corridors. A place where a large army couldn't move freely. But two people could. They entered the crypt and hid behind a collapsed stone wall. Jaime could barely breathe. "We lost Brienne," he said, pain in his voice. "She knew the risk," Arya replied coldly, though her eyes were glassy. "We all did." The temperature dropped again. Footsteps echoed. The Night King entered the crypt alone. No army, no White Walkers, just him and death. He moved with calm steps, not afraid, not cautious. He knew they were near. He was hunting them like animals. Arya signaled to Jaime a quick nod, and they separated silently. Arya took the left passage. Jaime circled to the right. They would trap him in the middle. The Night King paused in front of the broken wall. His head tilted slightly, as if he sensed something nearby. Then Arya appeared from the shadows, leaping down with a fierce cry. She swung her dagger with both hands, aiming for his neck, but he was ready. He turned, faster than light, and grabbed her wrist again. But this time, Jaime was ready too. He came from behind, using the broken sword hilt like a spike, and drove it straight into the Night King's back. The Night King didn't scream, but he turned. His face changed. For the first time, he looked angry. The ice around them cracked. The walls of the crypt groaned, and from the darkness behind came the dead, whites, hundreds of them, crawling, climbing, snarling. Arya freed herself and screamed, "We have to end it now." She leaped again, flipping over the Night King, and dropped the dagger. It fell, right into Jaime's hand. He caught it without thinking, and with all the strength left in his broken, shamed, tired body, he stabbed it deep into the Night King's chest, right where his heart should be. Time stopped. The Night King froze. His eyes met Jaime's. Then they shattered. Blue shards flew through the air as his body cracked, broke, and exploded into cold mist. Every white behind him collapsed instantly. The cold lifted. Silence fell. Arya stood still, chest rising and falling. "Is it over?" she whispered. Jaime stared at the pieces of the dagger in his hand. "I think we just killed death itself." Arya laughed once, sharp and breathless. Then she looked behind her. Brienne was standing at the entrance, wounded, bloody, but alive. Jaime ran to her, arms wrapping around her without a word. And Arya, she turned toward the stars above. Winter wasn't gone yet, but hope had returned. Winterfell was still burning. The skies above were dark, filled with ash and smoke. Though the Night King was dead, the war had left deep wounds. Corpses of the fallen, both the living and the dead, covered the battlefield like snow. Arya, Jaime, and Brienne walked through the gates, covered in blood and dirt, dragging their tired bodies toward the great hall. People stared, not because they had survived, but because the Night King was gone, and he hadn't died in front of Bran in some grand trap. He died in the shadows, in the crypt, stabbed by a man once hated, once called Kingslayer. No one cheered. They didn't know how. It felt too strange to celebrate in a place filled with so much death. Sansa met them first. Her face was unreadable, her red hair falling across her shoulders. "Is it true?" she asked Arya, barely above a whisper. Arya nodded. "He's gone. We saw him turn to ice." Brienne collapsed onto a bench, holding her side. Blood oozed between her fingers, but she refused help. Jaime stood beside her, silent, his eyes scanning the ruined courtyard as if still expecting more dead to rise. Jon arrived next, exhausted, limping, his sword dripping black blood. He looked from Arya to Jaime, then back to Arya. "How?" "We hunted him," Arya said, her voice flat. "He wasn't going to walk into Bran's arms like some fool. He was too smart for that." "You should have told me," Jon said, anger creeping into his voice. Arya's eyes narrowed. "If we had told you, you would have stopped us." "She's right," Jaime added quietly. "You wanted to win with honor. We just wanted to win." There was silence again. Then Bran was rolled forward in his chair, his eyes distant as always. "He knew," Arya said. "Didn't he?" Bran turned to her slowly. "I saw pieces. Not everything. You let us go to die." "I let you go to change fate," Bran replied without emotion. "And you did." Jaime stepped forward, wiping blood from his face. "We killed him, but we nearly died doing it. Don't treat it like it was part of your plan." Bran blinked, unfazed. "It was never my plan. It was his." He pointed at Jon. Jon looked confused. "What?" "You're still the symbol they'll follow," Bran said. "Even if you didn't strike the final blow." Arya scoffed. "So what now? You feed the North a lie?" "No," Sansa said, stepping between them. "But we control what they believe. Let them think Jon drove the dagger. The people need a hero, not a secret assassin and a disgraced knight." Jaime's face hardened. "Disgraced knight? You may have saved us," she replied. "But people remember what you were." Brienne stood up, her voice stronger now. "Then change what they remember." But the decision was made. That night, a feast was held, cold and quiet. Jon stood as the silent hero, though he barely smiled. Arya sat at the far end of the hall, untouched food before her. Jaime and Brienne stood near the doors, like guards, forgotten by most, but not by all. Tormund approached with a jug of ale. "Heard you stabbed the Night King," he said to Jaime, grinning. Jaime shook his head. "It wasn't just me." Tormund leaned closer. But no one likes a complicated story." And that was the truth. The tale spread that Jon Snow had lured the Night King into battle, that he'd fought him alone while the others held off the dead. A lie. A sweet, clean lie that people could worship. Arya hated it. That night, she climbed the walls of Winterfell and sat under the stars, her dagger beside her. Brienne joined her, limping. "They've already written us out," Arya muttered. Brienne didn't answer at first. Then softly she said, "We didn't do it for thanks." "I didn't do it for lies either," Arya snapped. Below them, the fires burned through the night. And somewhere beyond, other dangers waited. The war against death was over, but the fight for the truth had just begun. And not everyone wanted the truth to survive. Days passed. Winterfell was still quiet, but not peaceful. The dead were gone, but their memory clung to every stone, every whisper in the halls. Jon Snow had become a reluctant hero, bowed to by lords and whispered about in taverns. The story of how he killed the Night King had already spread beyond the north, south to the Vale, to the Riverlands, even into whispers among the surviving Lannisters. But in the shadows of the great walls, the truth was alive. Arya carried it like a wound. She trained alone now, slicing through dummies with her dagger, fast as lightning. Brienne watched from a distance, arms crossed, her wounds healing slow, but her mind sharper than ever. "Does it ever bother you?" Arya asked one day, wiping sweat from her brow. Brienne raised an eyebrow. "What?" "That everyone believes a lie. That we were there, and they don't even know." Brienne hesitated. "I've lived long enough to know truth doesn't always win. Sometimes it's buried. Sometimes people bury it themselves." Arya nodded slowly. "Maybe, but I'm not done yet." Brienne tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Arya stepped closer, her voice low. "Something's wrong. I can feel it. The Night King is dead, but the cold ... it's not lifting. It's like something's still unfinished." Brienne's eyes narrowed. "You think he's not really dead?" "I saw him break," Arya whispered. "I saw his body turn to ice, but I also saw his eyes before they shattered. It was like—" He wasn't surprised. Brienne said nothing, but her hand drifted toward her sword. That night, Arya went to Jaime. He was in the blacksmith's corner, hammering a new blade with his one good hand. His golden hand was scorched from battle. The room smelled like smoke and steel. "I need to leave Winterfell," she said. Jaime didn't stop hammering. "Why?" "Because I think the Night King was just a piece of something larger." Jaime looked up then, serious. "We killed him, Arya." "Yes," she replied. "But did we kill what made him?" Jaime put down the hammer. "You sound like Bran," Arya scoffed. "Bran speaks in riddles." "I speak with blades." He stared at her. "Where would you even go?" "North," Arya said. "Beyond the wall, where it all started." Jaime sighed, rubbing his eyes. "You want me to come with you?" "You've seen what I've seen," she said. "You stabbed the Night King. You deserve to know the truth as much as I do." Jaime hesitated. Then he nodded. They left 2 nights later, without telling anyone except Brienne. She was furious. "You'll die out there." "We should have died already," Jaime said quietly. "But we didn't. And maybe that means we're not done yet." Brienne looked at them both, the young killer and the tired knight, and saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Purpose. She gave Arya a wrapped bundle. "Valyrian steel," she said. "Take it. You'll need it more than I do." Arya nodded, thankful. They rode under a moonless sky, heading north beyond the wall. What they found wasn't silence. It was whispers. Abandoned wildling camps, frozen over as if caught in time. Strange symbols carved into trees, the same ones the children of the forest once used. And one night, far from all civilization, Jaime woke up to see Arya standing over a strange patch of ice, with fire in her hand. The ice didn't melt. She looked at him, face pale. "It's back." Jaime's mouth went dry. "What is?" She pointed at the ground. He knelt. Below the surface, barely visible, was something glowing. Blue. A single eye, staring up at them through the ice. Unblinking, unmoving, and definitely not human. Jaime stood up slowly. "So we killed the Night King. But not the darkness that made him. Arya finished. They both stared into the frozen ground. The long night was over, but the deeper night, the true night, had just begun. Arya stood still, staring into the ice, her breath sharp in the freezing air. That glowing blue eye beneath the ground never blinked, never moved, but it was watching. Jaime felt it too. A pull, like gravity, like something ancient calling out from beneath the world. "I don't think it's just one," Arya whispered. "I think there are more. I think the Night King was. A soldier, not the commander." Jaime clenched his jaw. "Then what are we standing on right now?" Arya stepped back. Something that shouldn't exist. They marked the place with stones and moved west, deeper into the wild, where no patrols came, and even wildlings feared to tread. Day by day, they saw more signs, twisted trees, unnatural winds, entire forests frozen in mid-growth, untouched by life. Something was stirring beyond the wall. And then they found the cave. Half buried beneath snow and shadow, it was carved into the side of a mountain. Symbols marked the entrance, not just of the children of the forest, but older, more primal. Jaime touched one of the markings. It burned. "Leave it," Arya warned. "Magic." They entered anyway. The cave was vast inside, much bigger than it seemed from outside. The walls glowed faintly blue, and in the center sat a stone altar, covered in frozen vines and bones, human bones. On the altar lay something wrapped in black cloth. Arya approached slowly and peeled back the cover. It was a crown, not gold, not silver. It looked like it had been made of black ice, forged by winter itself. And beneath it, burned into the stone, were the same words again and again in an ancient tongue. Arya could read some of it. The language of the faceless men had roots here. She translated aloud, "The king who fell shall rise. The king who rises shall fall. But the one in shadows never dies." Jaime frowned. Outside, the sky had changed. It wasn't just night. It was black, like the stars had fled. Jaime looked up and froze. Something was moving in the clouds. Huge, slow, like a shadow with wings. Arya saw it too. "That's not Viserion." "No," Jaime said. "That's something else." They rode south without rest, horses foaming, hooves pounding. Arya looked back once and saw a long line of ice stretching behind them. Like a crack in the world itself was chasing them. The land was changing, freezing again, despite the Night King's death. They had to warn someone, anyone. But when they returned to the wall, it was gone, torn down from the inside, as if something ancient had burst out, not broken in. Arya dismounted slowly, disbelief on her face. "This wasn't the Night King's work," she whispered. "This is older than him, deeper." Jaime didn't say anything. He stared out over the shattered stones of the wall, then down at the bag on Arya's saddle. The crown was still there, wrapped tight, but he could feel it pulsing. Alive. Back in Winterfell, Sansa sat on her throne, receiving lords and letters, calm and composed. The kingdom was healing, slowly, painfully, until a raven arrived, carrying just one message. 4 words. He was not alone. Sansa read it once, then again, and suddenly she understood. The war wasn't won. It had only begun. Winterfell was no longer safe. Sansa dropped the raven's letter, her fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't like her to show fear, but those 4 words struck deeper than any blade. He was not alone. That meant the Night King was just the beginning. She called an emergency council. Jon arrived first, quiet and tired, his eyes still hollow from the battle that had brought him false glory. Davos stood beside him, always loyal. Bran was wheeled in, his eyes as strange and far away as ever. Tyrion came too, slower than before, limping from an old wound, drinking less, thinking more. Sansa didn't speak until the doors were sealed. Jaime and Arya sent this from beyond the wall. Jon frowned. They left without telling us. They had to, Sansa replied. They went hunting for truth, and they found something darker than we ever imagined. Bran's voice floated like mist. The one in shadows. Everyone turned to him. You know what it is? Tyrion asked. Bran nodded slowly. I saw glimpses. Long before the Night King was made, there were older powers, forgotten powers. The children of the forest weren't the first magic. They only borrowed it. Jon leaned forward. What did they borrow it from? Bran's eyes turned icy white for a second. From something buried deep beneath the world. Something that doesn't die. Silence fell over the room. Sansa stood, steel in her voice. And now that thing is waking up. Meanwhile, far beyond the wall, Arya and Jaime were barely staying ahead of the cold. The shadow in the sky had returned, massive, shapeless, dark as a nightmare. It didn't fly like a dragon. It floated, as if the very darkness had taken form. Wherever it passed, animals died. Trees withered. Even the snow froze solid. Arya tried to ignore it, but every step south brought more signs of decay. Entire villages abandoned. Wildlings dead with their eyes open, mouths frozen in a silent scream. At night, the voices began. Whispers in a language neither of them understood. Sometimes in dreams, sometimes in the wind. Jaime began to mutter in his sleep, strange words, hollow and cold. Arya shook him awake more than once, sweat pouring down his face. Something's inside my head, he confessed one night. I hear it whispering when I close my eyes. Arya nodded grimly. It's the crown. It wants to be worn. I should throw it in the sea, Jaime muttered. No, Arya said. That's what it wants. It wants to be cast away, so someone else finds it. Someone weaker. They rode hard toward Castle Black, or what was left of it. When they arrived, they found only ash. The watch was gone. The castle destroyed from within. Walls caved in, black marks across the stone like it had been burned from the inside out. No signs of the dead. No signs of the living. Just silence. Then they saw the message, burned into the wood of the old gate. A single symbol. Arya traced her fingers over it, her breath shaky. It was the same symbol that surrounded the altar where they'd found the crown. This wasn't war. This was ritual. Jaime finally spoke, his voice low. It's not about power. It's about resurrection, I think. The crown is a key. Arya looked at him. To what? To bring back something older than death. That night, they made camp in the snow. Arya didn't sleep. She stared at the stars, though fewer were visible now, as if the sky itself was fading. Do you regret it? Jaime asked. Killing the Night King? He nodded. She shook her head. No, but I regret thinking it was over. A sudden gust of wind knocked over their fire. They both stood, and in the trees beyond. Eyes, dozens of them, glowing, blue, but not like the Night King's. These eyes pulsed like a heartbeat. And then they came, not whites, not White Walkers. Something worse. Tall, twisted beings made of ice and shadow. No face, no weapons, just claws and hunger. Jaime drew his sword. Arya reached for her dagger, but before they could attack, they stopped. The creatures parted, and something walked between them. It wore black robes made of snow and ash. Its head was a crown of thorns, and where its face should be was a mirror of ice. They saw their own reflections in it, and then it spoke, not aloud, but in their minds. Return the crown, or become my next king's. Jaime dropped his blade. Arya gritted her teeth, trembling, but she didn't run. Not this time. The wind stopped, not slowed, stopped. No rustling trees, no howling air, just stillness, thick and crushing. Jaime and Arya stood frozen, heartbeats loud in their ears as the shadowed figure loomed before them, flanked by monsters not born of any natural world. The thing's mirror face shimmered, showing Jaime his younger self, golden armor, prideful smirk. Then it shifted, reflecting Arya's face covered in blood from her first kill. It was mocking them. "Return the crown, ... double quotes." The voice echoed again, not through the air, but deep within their skulls. "Or wear it, and be my vessels." Arya stepped forward, defiant, dagger in hand. "We'll destroy it before that happens." The shadow didn't move, but the creatures surrounding it hissed, their bodies vibrating with a sound that was neither scream nor growl. It was despair made into noise. It cannot be destroyed. It chooses its bearer. It waits. It whispers. It survives. Jaime gritted his teeth, reaching back for the wrapped bundle tied to his saddle. The crown inside pulsed stronger now, almost alive in his hand. As soon as he touched it, a cold spike shot through his spine. For a moment, he felt power, strength, purpose. He saw himself on a throne of black stone, unkillable, untouchable. Arya slapped his hand away. "Don't listen to it," she snapped. "It's feeding on you." Jaime gasped like someone pulled him out of water. His knees buckled. It almost felt like it was me. Arya stepped between him and the figure. "We're not giving you anything," she growled. "You want it? Come take it." The creatures screamed and surged forward. Arya threw her dagger. It hit the mirror face and shattered. Not the creature, the dagger. The Lyrian steel cracked like cheap glass. Arya's eyes widened in horror. "No." The shadow figure raised its hand, and the earth split. A line of ice tore across the ground, straight between Arya and Jaime. Jaime was thrown backward, tumbling down a small ravine, vanishing into the fog below. "Arya," he shouted. But she couldn't move. The shadow stood in front of her now, towering, its cold presence choking. "You are brave. But you are nothing without the blade. That was your only hope." Arya didn't blink. "Then I'll make do with my hands." The figure tilted its head, as if amused, then raised a finger. Arya's body lifted into the air, throat constricted, breath stolen. The mirror face changed again, now showing her father's execution, her brother's wedding, her mother's dead eyes. Memories meant to break her, but Arya Stark was harder than loss. She spit blood into the thing's face and whispered, "I've seen worse monsters than you." And in that moment, an arrow pierced the figure's shoulder. It recoiled, shrieking. Brienne stood at the edge of the woods, bow in hand, face streaked with mud and rage. "I followed you north," she shouted. "I told you, you're not doing this alone." 2 more arrows flew, striking the shadow's leg and chest. They didn't kill it, but they distracted it. Arya fell, hitting the ground hard. Jaime climbed up from the ravine, bloody but alive, dragging something behind him. A bag filled with wildfire flasks he'd stolen years ago from King's Landing. "Magic won't work?" He shouted. "Let's see how you like fire." He lit one flask and hurled it toward the creatures. Green flames erupted, consuming 3 of them instantly. The others screamed and scattered. Arya leapt up and tackled the crown bearer, grabbing the icy crown from the saddle and jamming it down on its own head. The creature shrieked in shock. The moment the crown touched it, its body imploded, sucked into itself, the mirror face folding inward like shattered glass, screaming as if every soul it had consumed was escaping at once. And then, silence. The other monsters melted. The sky cleared, the cold lifted slightly. Not fully. Arya collapsed in the snow, coughing. Brienne rushed to her side, lifting her gently. Jaime dropped to his knees beside them, gasping. "Is it over?" Arya opened her hand. The crown was gone, melted into dust, but the black ash on her palm didn't fade. Brienne looked at her. "You destroyed it." "No," Arya said, eyes blank. "I wore it." For a moment, Jaime looked horrified. "You what?" "I had to," she said, voice shaking. To kill it, I had to become what it feared most. Brienne's voice dropped. What did it fear? Arya looked up, eyes cold, empty. Choice. They returned to Winterfell days later, bruised, broken, but victorious. Or so they thought. That night, Arya awoke with her heart pounding. She looked into the mirror. Her reflection smiled back. But she hadn't.